The office never truly sleeps. Even at night, there's a hum, the low thrum of servers, the sigh of the air conditioning, the ghost of 100 daily stresses lingering in the empty cubicles. I used to find it comforting, that hum. It felt like purpose, like being part of a living, breathing machine. I was Alex, a cornerstone of Vantage Dynamics, or so I believed. For 5 years, I bled company blue. I was the first in, the last out, the one who could turn a failing project around with a quiet intensity that my boss, David, called invaluable. He'd clap my shoulder, his smile a practice thing. "You're the future here, Alex," he'd say. And I believed him. We all want to be believed in, don't we? We want to think our sweat, our sacrifice, our silent compromises are building something real. A career, a legacy, a life. But the truest things are often felt before they're seen. A quiet unease, a whisper in your gut. It started with little things. A glance exchanged between colleagues that cut off when I walked into the break room. Mark from design, who joined after me, suddenly rolling up in a new car after a project I'd spearheaded. A stray, liquor-loosened comment at the holiday party. "You must be sitting pretty, Alex. They've got to be taking care of you." I'd laugh, a tight, polite sound. Of course they were taking care of me. My reviews were stellar. Exceeds expectations. Every single time. The crack in my perfect world didn't appear with a bang. It was a silent digital fracture. A late night, just me and the glow of my screen. I was digging for an old financial model, navigating the labyrinth of shared drives, when I stumbled into a folder that wasn't meant for me. Q4 compensation, final allocations. My breath hitched. This was HR's sacred ground. Eleanor's domain. The mouse cursor hovered, a tiny arrow of temptation against the dark screen. The hum of the office felt louder, accusatory. I clicked, and there it was. My name, my salary, my bonus, and right beside it, Mark's. His base salary was a number that didn't compute, 20% higher. His bonus was a small fortune compared to mine. The numbers swam, cold and clinical on the spreadsheet. This wasn't a minor discrepancy. This was a chasm. I scrolled, a sick fascination taking over. Sarah, then a pattern emerged from the grid, not of merit but of something else. Something ugly. The air left my lungs. I sat in the dark, the hum now sounding like a lie. The foundation of my 5 years, it was built on sand. I couldn't unsee it. The unease had a shape now, a name, a dollar amount. So I did what you're supposed to do. I took my concern to the people in charge of fairness. I scheduled a meeting with Eleanor Rigby, the head of HR. Her name was a joke in the office, like the Beatles song, but there was nothing poetic about her. She was efficiency in a pearl necklace. I walked into her office with my heart a pounding drum of righteous confusion. I was calm, professional. I laid it out not as an attack, but as a puzzle I couldn't solve. "I've come across some information that suggests a significant pay disparity," I said, my voice steady. "I'd like to understand the criteria so I can better position myself." Eleanor listened, her hands steepled, that permanent, benign smile on her lips. She didn't look shocked. She looked rehearsed. And then she began to speak. And her words, they didn't just dismiss me. They rebuilt the world around me into something sinister. "Alex," she said, her voice a smooth, oiled thing. "We value transparency. Thank you for coming forward." She paused, as if choosing her words with surgical care. But compensation is a nuanced ecosystem. It's never as simple as 2 numbers side by side. Then came the parade of justifications. Market factors. Mark, she explained, was hired in a more competitive talent cycle. He was a top-tier candidate who required a market adjustment. The words top-tier hung in the air, implying my own tier was something less. Negotiation dynamics. Some people, she said with a faint, almost admiring shrug, were simply more assertive from the beginning. My polite acceptance of their first offer was now a permanent mark against me, a sign of weak ambition. But the core of it, the real poison, was in the vague, corporate language that followed. She spoke of internal equity balances and long-term retention strategies for key demographics. She talked about broader team harmony and historical precedents. She looked me dead in the eye, that smile never wavering, and said, "You have to trust the system, Alex. It's designed for fairness on a macro level." Fairness. On a macro level. While on my level, in my life, it was a calculated, deliberate injustice. I felt myself shrinking in the plush chair. I wasn't an employee seeking clarity. I was a malfunctioning component being gently, firmly reset. She offered me mentorship to improve my advocacy skills. Suggested a lateral move to a department with a clearer compensation pathway. Each word was a door slammed in my face. A polite, smiling dismissal. I left her office not with anger, but with a hollow, ringing coldness. The betrayal wasn't in the pay gap itself. It was in the defense of it. They knew, and they had built a fortress of jargon to protect their knowing. The trust I'd given them, the late nights, the loyalty, the belief that we were a team, had been a currency they'd spent freely, and now my account was empty. I returned to my desk. I looked at the Employee of the Quarter certificate on my wall. I looked at the team photo, all of us smiling under the Vantage logo. It was all a set piece, a beautiful, convincing stage. And I had been playing my part with heartbreaking sincerity. As the numbness thawed, something else woke up. Not the hot, messy anger from before. This was crystalline, clear, a cold, hard resolve. They wanted me to trust their system? I would create my own. The next 4 weeks, I became the perfect employee. I smiled at David. I nodded at Eleanor in the hall. Inside, I was a vault, and inside that vault, a plan was being forged. I called it Project Transparency. Its goal wasn't to rage, but to reveal. To leave in a way that would make my absence a louder statement than my presence ever was. I began to document everything, legally, carefully. Every glowing review, every email praising my work on a major account, every metric that tied my effort directly to company profit. I built a timeline, a damning graph where my contribution line soared while my compensation line flatlined. I listened, now with purpose, to my colleagues. Over coffee, Sarah confided she'd been told her collaborative style was less valuable than a decisive one. Ben discovered a junior male employee was nipping at his heels, salary-wise. The whispers became a chorus, and the melody was always the same. But I wasn't just building a case. I was building an escape hatch. In the quiet hours of the night, I laid the groundwork for my own consultancy. I reached out to former clients, people who had always valued my work directly. "I'm considering going independent," I'd say. The response was immediate. Contracts took shape. Freedom began as a sketch, then a blueprint, then a solid structure waiting for me to walk through its door. The most crucial piece, though, was the legacy I would leave behind. I drafted a document, not an emotional rant, a cold, factual, evidence-based report. It outlined the disparities, attached the performance data that dismantled their nuanced excuses, and quoted Eleanor's own dismissive words back at her. It was a mirror. I titled it, "An Analysis of Compensation Fairness and Cultural Trust at Vantage Dynamics." I addressed it to the board, to the entire C-suite, and I set it to send, like a time-delayed truth bomb, 1 hour after I handed in my resignation. The day was a Monday, surreally bright. I wore the suit that made me feel powerful. I felt a calm so deep it was like standing in the eye of a hurricane. In my bag were 2 envelopes, one physical, for David and Eleanor, with a letter of 2 blunt sentences resigning effective immediately. The other, digital, sat in my drafts, ticking toward 10:01 a.m. I walked into the office, through the familiar buzz that now felt like the static of a broken radio. I went straight to David's office. He was on the phone, laughing. He waved me in. I didn't sit. I placed the envelope on his desk. His smile melted into confusion, then panic as he read it. "Alex, what is this?" "Let's talk about this," he sputtered, the phone forgotten. "Everything is in the letter, David. My decision is final." My voice was a flat, calm lake. I turned and walked out, leaving him stammering into the receiver. The walk to HR was long and short, every step echoing in the suddenly heightened silence. Eleanor's door was open. Her professional smile was ready until she saw my face. I placed the twin envelope before her. "I'm resigning. Effective immediately." Her smile didn't fade, it shattered. Behind her eyes, a calculation engine whirred furiously, shifting from personnel management to damage control. "This is extremely abrupt. There are protocols. An exit interview. We can discuss." "There's nothing to discuss," I said, cutting her off for the first and last time. "The discussion is over." I turned. I walked back to my desk, collected my single plant, my favorite mug, a photo from the drawer. It took less than 2 minutes. The office was watching, a gallery of stunned faces. I slung my bag over my shoulder and walked out the main doors into the blinding, beautiful, free sunlight. I didn't look back, but I smiled, because in 57 minutes, the reckoning would begin. At 10:01 a.m., standing on the sun-warmed steps, my personal phone vibrated once. Sent. The digital envelope was opened in boardrooms, in corner offices, on the phones of every powerful person in the building. My evidence was now their emergency. The silence from them was profound. But for my colleagues, my phone lit up like a vigil. First, tentative messages. "Alex, is this true?" Then, a flood. "Thank you for saying what we couldn't." The email. "I'm speechless." Sarah wrote, "You have more courage than all of them combined." The cage I'd left held so many others, and I had just shaken the bars with all my strength. David called first, his voice strained between fury and fear. "What have you done?" "This is inflammatory. A breach." "It's a compilation of facts and my personal experience," I replied, my calmness a weapon. "My lawyer has advised me on the confidentiality aspects." The word lawyer landed like a gavel. He switched tactics, desperation seeping through. "Let's meet. We can fix this. A new salary, a promotion. Name your price." The buyout. It was the final insult. "There's no price for trust, David. You can't promote someone who doesn't work for you." Eleanor called next. The syrup was gone, replaced by a wire-thin threat. "Alexandra, this is a serious miscalculation. This could be seen as defamatory. It damages your reputation, too." "My reputation is built on my work, Eleanor," I said. Which, as the documents show, was exceptional. "I'm not afraid of the truth." "Are you?" The click in my ear was her only reply. The panic was metastasizing. By afternoon, the email was a wildfire within the company. People forwarded it to personal accounts. The hushed talks were now open, furious debates. The team harmony was a cacophony of anger and validation. Then, the call from the CEO's office. The assistant's voice was polished ice. A meeting was requested for the next morning with the CEO himself. The panic had reached the pinnacle. I took a slow breath. "Please inform them I've moved on to new commitments. Any further communication can go through my legal counsel." I gave the email of a friend, an attorney who'd agreed to be a shield. I ended the call. On my laptop, 3 new client inquiries glowed on the screen. My calendar, my own calendar, was filling up. The revenge was complete. But the most satisfying part was what they did to themselves. In their frantic damage control, they held an all-hands meeting. David and Eleanor stood before the staff, trying to dismiss my letter as the disgruntled actions of a former employee. They promised a top-to-bottom review. But the employees, armed with my facts, pushed back. They quoted my email. They asked questions with sharp, newfound edges. The meeting was a public unraveling. Within a week, Sarah resigned. Then Ben. Then 2 more from my old team. They used my exit as a blueprint, negotiating their true worth elsewhere with the courage my action had given them. A tiny blip appeared in an industry gossip column. Turbulence Advantage Dynamics as strategy team departs, citing cultural concerns. The lie was no longer internal. It was seeping into the world. And Eleanor, the defender of the gap? I heard she was spending a lot of time with the board. Her perfect system, her nuanced ecosystem, was now a liability under a microscope. Her authority was permanently, irrevocably fractured. I didn't destroy the company. I broke their silence. I exposed their hypocrisy with their own data. I showed everyone still inside that the door wasn't locked. It was just heavy, and sometimes you need to slam it so hard the whole building shakes to make everyone else look up. Now, months later, I sit in my own quiet space. The hum I hear is my own computer, the kettle boiling for tea, the sound of my freedom. The revenge high has mellowed into a profound, unshakable peace. The lesson is etched into me. This wasn't just my story. It's the story of anyone who has ever been told their value is a complex secret decided behind closed doors. They use words like loyalty and team as chains. They defend the gap with smiles and jargon, hoping you'll never muster the simple, terrifying question, what am I worth? My revenge was never about destruction. It was about liberation. In claiming my own value, I accidentally held up a mirror. Some saw their reflection and found the strength to leave. The company, scrambling, was forced to look at its own reflection, too. So here is the truth, quiet and absolute. Your value is not a secret to be kept from you. It is not defined by a hidden spreadsheet or the soothing lies of those who profit from your doubt. It is the sum of your skill, your sweat, your mind, and your impact. Know it, document it, own it. And if the place you're at ever defends a gap between your worth and their valuation, remember, you have a choice. You can stay, listening to the hum of the lie, or you can build your own gate. You can walk through it, not with a scream, but with the deafening, powerful silence of someone who has finally, and forever, called their own worth by its right name. They panicked fast when I quit. But this peace, this life, built on my own terms, it's slow and deep, and it lasts forever. And that is the greatest justice of all.